All right, so there we are. We are live. It is good. So let me pull up the orthographic views assignment here and we'll walk through it. So page 83 of Grandpa's textbook. Yeah, some of them are like, yeah, it's like, how am I going to draw this thing? But as we'll see, it's not too bad. Now, lucky for you folks, there are some scale suggestions that are on the drawing, so you don't have to think about, what you're going to be doing with regards to scale. So we've got my 1:1 scale here, and then I'm looking for my 1:5 scale. So there's my 1:5 scale there. So we're going to be drawing. So for those of you who are looking at the stream, we're doing the dovetail slide, which hopefully you folks can see in sufficient detail. If not, I'm just going to bring it up nice and close to the camera so that dimensions are nicely legible. So you guys can pause that when you're watching this to get the dimensions off it. Extreme close up. And then the other one that we'll be looking at here on this page is the V block. So here I'll get a good, nice, close view of those dimension values as well. Okay, and then finally the third image is on page 84, the yoke support.
So you don't want us doing the angle clamp, Wes?
No, the three, well, it's whatever the ones that are mentioned in the assignment here. Yoke support. It's a dovetail slide, the V block, and the yoke support as per the handout. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to the yoke support is kind of a tough one, or a tougher one to set up. So um, I'll just grab a piece of 11 by 17 paper here and begin to lay this out. I'm keeping my paper someplace where I know it's not going to get any moisture in it. Okay, so I'm just going to check my camera orientation here. Okay, and then just lining up the paper to make sure I'm parallel, and then we're good to go here. Can't use the green stuff today because the high moisture content in the outside air means that the adhesive isn't binding on that tape right now. So Yes. Say say a prayer to the patron saint of lungs. Yeah, I think the air quality index in Chilliwack today is about 160, and I think above 150 they say don't do anything strenuous. So drafting is not generally considered to be a strenuous business. So that really depends how you do your drafting, but yeah, that's strenuous on the head. That's right. So
It was worse like earlier at like I don't know if you guys were up at like 7 o'clock, but
yes.
yeah, I could not see across my street. So it's lifted quite a bit now.
Okay, so we are now into layout mode here as we think about, I'll get the thing into the view here. So this is starting with the yoke support to talk about what our strategy is going to be for drawing this thing. So if we think about the views that we're going to be drawing, um, how many views do we need? Well, we're probably going to need that top view. And if we think about how this thing's going to be sitting on a table, we're kind of already looking at the top view right here. So that's going to be our top view. And then our front view is going to be a presentation like so. And then we're going to have a side view over here that looks at the object from this direction. So that kind of helps us figure out the three views that are required. So now what we can start doing is sorting out the math for placing this thing on a sheet and thinking about how much space we are going to need, especially in light of the fact that we're going to be using the 1 to 5 scale. So we've got to look at those numbers and see where all of our different views are going to lie here. So I'm just brushing the eraser shavings off the sheet. Okay, so first order of business is to add up our overall dimensions. So I'm going to pull up the calculator here. Okay, so we are 636 overall here, and then we've got a 238 for width, and then our overall on the side view should be 255. Yeah, so we got 255 here on the side. So now we can start laying this thing out on the sheet. So there's my overall dimensions there. You guys can see kind of numbers that we're going to be dealing with. All right. Now, of course, you folks should probably not mark up your textbook. You should just write it down on a piece of note paper outside of the textbook. More examples of the instructors say, doing don't do what I say, or don't do what I do what I say. Yeah. So, okay, so let's get that 1 to 5 scale up here. Okay, here we go. So I've got 636, so there's 650 right there. So that's kind of a good eyeball for how to lay this thing out. So I'm looking at balancing the amount of white space that I'm going to have as well. So I'm going to have about 650 and about 250. So you can see I'm going to have a ton of white space on this drawing. Now, if you folks want to save a tree, you could try and put more than one of these things on the same page. I find that to be kind of confusing, so I would advise against that. So I'm just going to take a really easy stab out of here. So I'm going to be pretty generous with my white space around the edges there. So there's my 636. So there's 640. Now, something like 636, if we look at each one of these ticks on the scale, 600, 605, 610. So each tick on our scale represents 5 millimeters. So to try and get 636 means you just kind of have to go a little bit past a 635 tick and call it a day. So now 255. So if I want to kind of figure out where I'm going to put 255 on here, so there's 250 and there's 200. So I'm kind of balancing the white space I'm going to have on either side of a 250 wide object. So there's 0, there's 255. So fair amount of white space here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my baseline for this drawing. It's kind of funny now that now that I'm home and I'm working all the time. I have a constant companion. You guys can see out there. That is Socks the cat. That is um, someone who's not getting the mole problem that I have in my yard. I have small little carpet bombing incidents that happen when all the moles decide that they need to come up in random places in the yard. And I told the cat she needs to get to work, but she's sleeping. So here's the baseline. All right. So now what I'm going to do is lay out the edges of my objects here vertically. So there's the bottom of my uh, front view, and this is going to be the edge of my top view. So it's going to be this edge right here of the block. So I've got another 255 segment that I need to draw here. So if this is my front view, I've got to come up 238. So where's 1 to 5? So there's 240. So there's going to be the top of my front view, about right there. And then I've got a 255 wide object to draw up above here. So if I say start here, 200, so if maybe about there is fine. And then down to 255. And there is a tick for that, so it makes it a little bit more accurate. So you can see the amount of white space I've got here. And I'm a little bit unbalanced. I should have drawn my drawing here a little bit farther off the bottom of the page. So I actually am going to relocate.
Hey Wes, how much space are you applying in between each view?
Well, again, I try to maintain a minimum of 5 centimeters, on the page, if not 8. So I really should have known better about starting a little higher um, on the drafting board, so or starting lower on the sheet. So I'm going to start again here. So there's my baseline, and I'll just try and tap into my construction line here. All right, so let's do this again. So I've got my front view, which is 238 high. So there's 250, there's 240. So now we've got the top view will be 255. So if that's the edge of my top view, and I'm just kind of watching for a 250 wide space up here and where that puts me. So that's pretty good right there. So I'll start here and come down to 250. Well, that wasn't very accurate. 255. Okay. So I'm just going to start blocking this thing out, just laying out some light construction lines. So of course, remember this top line here is going to come over and be used to construct my side view. So I will be getting ready to set up my side view here in a second as well. So here's the upper edge of my top view. And here's the lower edge of my top view I believe 255. I'll just measure this out in a second. I am drawing these a little bit darker than I would normally draw them, just so they get picked up by the camera. Okay, I'm just going to confirm my dimensions here again. Okay, and then 238. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to lay out my my side view. So I've got my front here and my top. So now I'm going to look at the dimensions of my side view. So my side view is going to be 255 wide by 238 tall. So here I'm just marking out the 636, 640, 635. So there's 636 there. And then 255. So I've got tons of space here. So there's 200, or there's my 0 mark, and then over to 255. Okay, so what this now is going to allow me to do is to draw the 45 for doing geometric transfers over between the top view and the side view. So there's that, and then I need to extend this construction line over here so I can draw the 45 for doing the transfer of lines over between views. There. And then my vertical here for my left edge of my side view. Okay, so now we're kind of set up here. Now the question is, which view should we draw first? Now there's going to be some aspects of this that we are going to be tough to sort out, especially this angled face. So this angled face right here, there's going to be some views where it's going to be kind of difficult to figure out what's going on with this thing, and so we are definitely going to be doing some transfer of uh, geometry between views. So for instance, for doing the top view right now, we would not be able to figure out where this line should terminate in the top view. We'd probably be able to figure out this, maybe, but with something like this, probably what makes most sense to happen would be to start with the front view, and then we can transfer some of these lines up to the top view to help us out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay out the front view. So I'm going to do the two 175 pieces at the bottom because those are pretty straightforward to measure up. Now again, I'm just going to really have a look at my dimensions here and make sure that my 636 is bang on here on the edges. So I'm looking pretty good. So I'll measure off the 175, 150, 160, 170, 175. And I'll just hit that again because I think it was a little bit off. So from the other end, 175, there's 190, 180, 175 right there. So we've got a 90-degree angle here. So this means we've got 45 on each side. So we can use the 45 set square for this. draw these in really light so that, because I don't know how far I have to go to make this extend. So I have to go a little bit farther there. Draw that again. Okay, so some dimensions that we do know, we've got a 91 millimeter offset for the thickness of this block of material. So I'm going to get that 91 happening here. Fairly tricky stuff here. So, because I mean, it's like, it means it's just basically a little tick past 90. So there's 50, there's 90. So it's kind of a, your guess is as good as mine. Is that 91? Is that 92? What is that, right? So there's my 91. So I'll draw that across. So I've got that. So there's 91. Now, of course, we need our offsets here. So there's 90. So just a little touch beyond that. There's 91. On both sides. And then I'll bring the set square back in and we'll draw both of those up. Okay, now you can see here we've been given that 238 height. So that is what's going to truncate our triangle here. So I can actually begin to start drawing the object lines up for these parts here, because those are going to be solid lines, as we can see here, all along this face. So I'll switch over to the 0.5 mil pencil here for this. I've never actually live streamed hand drafting before, of course. I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to use this as a cure for insomnia in the future. Yeah, some of you are catching the self-effacing nature of that statement. But you know what? This is actually, I think this is super cool. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, and one of the aspects of this that I really like is that, well, cognitively, I know that there's aspects of this that are excellent. I quite like that our advisory committee um, still likes that we teach this. Um, there is so much of how different industries have done their jobs um, that has been relegated to the trash bin as technology advances. And some of that is inevitable and it's necessary, because sometimes if you were to keep some of these old technologies, you'd lose your shirt. You just wouldn't be able to compete in the market. But on the other hand, there's some aspects of this that are timeless and they're beautiful. So it's a bit of an art. And because I was talking, I drew this wrong. So, GG. All right, here we go. Just got to erase the little bits of the triangle here that went above that line. The instructor was monologuing. Okay, so let's clean that up. So yes, this gives us the dimension to the top of our form here. And then I've got to come back and do the hidden line for our slot. which is 47.6, which you have no way in heck of being able to measure anything even approaching that. We can get like somewhere between 45 and 50 for the depth of the slot. So there's 50 right there, the tall tick there just coming off the D in Stetler. And then the 45 tick is the one just below it. So this thing's 47.6. So it's about halfway between the 45 mark and the 50 mark, which I'm going to say it's about there. So I'll bring up the ruler and I'm going to draw my dashed line going across here from my hidden line. First of all, I'll do my construction line, and then here we go. Oh, my lead's broken. Actually, I'm going to do that with my 0.5 mil and just go at it really lightly. Okay, so there's my hidden line. And the nice thing about this is that I'll be able to project this intersection upwards when I'm doing my top view. So right now I'm going to put in the depth of the slot here, which is 80. So I'm going to measure that off. Put some construction lines in here just to make sure that when I commit to those lines with softer lead, I'm not going to be offline. Now, one little trick I should mention here is when you're putting your pencil against a straight edge, try to avoid having the lead tip rub directly on the plastic of your square or your straight edge. What you can do in either of these cases here is you can get so that you're maybe a little bit away from it, or if you do have to rub against it, make sure that most of the pressure is being applied downwards with minimal force being put against your straight edge, because there's a danger, of course, that you could rub lead off the square onto your sheet, and that would suck. But if you're using the mechanical pencil, there's even a better opportunity, because then you can rub against the metal barrel itself and therefore not even have to hit the lead. So if I hold my pencil almost vertically, then I can be rubbing downwards on the metal barrel and not have any concern with lead getting onto the sheet at all. So what we want to do is make sure that the dashed lines are, in this case, I'm making sure they're more or less symmetrical, so my dashes are the same length on both sides. Now with this isn't going to be difficult to translate up to our top view because we can just draw that down. But because this is on an angled face, we don't know where this line begins. We don't know where this line begins if we were just drawing this straight away in the top view. So our front view here is going to help us in drawing the top view, which I will do now. So I'm going to line in the side lines and the horizontal lines of my top view. And keep an eye out on your sheet. If you see anything that resembles lead, just get that off there straight away. So I had a little bit, I'm not sure what that was, but I don't want that stuff on there because it's going to make my drafting dirty. Now, I just realized I am going to be doing some erasing here because I've got those two 64mm pieces on the sides that I forgot to lay out. So I am going to be doing some erasing here. So that's unfortunate. I should have been looking at that a little bit more here. So there's 50, there's 60, there's 65. So just a touch less than 65 is there. There's 50, 60. I'm at 65 right now. 50, 55, 60, 65. So just a little bit less than 65 and lay that out. So now I can bring these lines up from the bottom here so I don't even have to worry about measuring them. Right, so I've already got this 80mm inset drawn on the front view. So we can see the portion here that I need to erase. So let's get the Erasure Shield going on this thing. Okay, so let's get these other lines here. Now for a situation like this where I don't need to draw a really long line, it's actually more convenient to use the smaller of the two squares, which is the, in my case, my 3060 set square is smaller. So it's a little bit more maneuverable to get into this space. Yes, I am hand drawing in my corners. Now, for bringing in the corner line here from the front view and taking it up to the top view, keep in mind that with mechanical drafting, everything is one line weight for our object lines. Your dash lines should be a little bit lighter, just as black, but not as thick as the object lines. So now I'm going to transfer up these lines here that tell us where the lines that go across, where we go from the flat up on the angle. So just really want to make sure I've got my pencil in the right place, and I'll just sketch that in on each side. And then I've got to do where the slot exits the top of the block. There we go. Now, as far as the width of the slot is concerned, it's not 64, so it's actually got its own width, so it's 80. So I've got to measure that here as well. So there's 100, 90, and 80. So there's the one side, and there's 80 here. Now I'm going to draw the top parts here where this hits the top of the block. So I'm going to draw this up for our horizontals. Okay, so once I finally start hardlining what we see here, and I'm just going to do the one side of it here because I don't want to draw the whole thing for you guys. So what do we see here for line weights? So this line here goes all the way across our top view. So we're going to see this. So in mechanical drafting, there is no differentiation between a line weight for the edge of the object versus a fold line on the object itself. Now, as we're going to see in a few days, you have to pay attention to the kind of transition that you have when parts of the object change direction. So if this was filleted, so if this was a smooth, round transition between the flat and a 45-degree angle, there would be no line here, and this line would not be drawn. But by virtue of the fact that we are having a sharp transition, that line does get drawn, and it's the same line weight as the edge of the object. So then this slot, it's a hard line, and it emanates the top of the object here and here. The slot goes right through, so we see those lines here. So we get this little rectangle up here, like so. All right, then at the top here, we've got these two transitions, these changes in direction. So that point and that point will be seen on the top view, but they're not continuous because there's that slot in the middle. So that's what we're going to see. Now there's one more line here that needs to be shown, and it's our first discussion of a projected hidden line. So here we can see we've got these slots through our object, and so those create a hidden line. But this creates a hidden line as well, as does this, and as does this. So okay, so these get projected up as hidden lines as well. So I'm just gonna, yeah, that's my chicken. The other one's laying an egg, so the other chicken's losing its mind because its buddy is gone to lay an egg. Okay, get out of here. Come on, get out. Hold on, I gotta go chase the chicken. Just have to blast a little bit of water at the chicken and it'll run off, and we let them free range because they clean crap up in the grass and stuff too, so and we don't have to feed them as much. Oh, it's true. If you free range your chickens, they actually eat crane flies and a lot of other stuff that's in your grass, and they don't eat as much. So when you put the feed out for them, they'll actually consume less food, and they get other things too. It just makes for better quality eggs, so it's a good thing. Except for when you come out on the deck in the morning and you accidentally step on chicken shit because one of the chickens decide to come up on a deck and take a dump right before you're coming out. So yes, that's right. Occupational hazard. So one last hidden line here, that's not a hidden line, this will be a real line. This will be the hidden line here. So we'll have 3 hidden lines in our top view for each of these 3 corners, which you guys will see in about 15 seconds on YouTube, so I'll draw those up. And I should be paying attention to the length of the dashes in all my views because I want to keep them. That's not a very good set of hidden lines here, so it's a bit of an art to get these things consistent. Yeah, they are actually. My neighbors are like, "What's wrong with your chicken?" And I'm like, "It's stupid." I mean, every day at this time, one of the chickens goes and lays an egg and abandons the other one, and then the other chicken runs around like somebody shot their friend. And 10 minutes later, it's like the chicken's back. It's like, "Oh, look, your friend is back." We only have two chickens. We'll probably get some more so that there's less likelihood of one chicken going into full stress mode because their friend is gone. So you folks can see the how the hidden lines propagate upwards here from our front view to the top view. So, and of course I need to address this error here as well, which I will leave you folks on your own to do. So really get used to using um, one view to help you uh, draw the other. And in the drawings too, they specifically are misleading. They don't necessarily draw things to exactly the right scale. So if you're looking at our drawing, you know, the 3D drawing in the textbook, you can see how, um, like I note straight away that the width down here on the foot at 64 seems to be comparatively smaller than the width of the side pieces left over from the slot up top. So they may not exactly have these things drawn to scale, which is by design, so you'll have to think through these numbers a little bit more and follow the numbers of the sketches rather than just doing an exact redraw of one of these objects in the page. So they'll be close, but they're out a little bit, and that's on purpose. Okay, so now let's talk about the dimensioning of this. So in the assignment, um, now we're going to use dimensions in the aligned method, and we're just doing our overall dimensions as we've discussed in class. So um, what that would mean is we're going to try and keep the dimensions inside the drawings, inside the white space between the drawings, rather than on the outside of the drawings between the drawings and the outside edges of the sheet. So we're going to put our dimensions inside. So we've got these construction lines, which we can now hijack to to do the dimensioning for our drawings. Now I'm going to erase these labels because they're going to be a bit in the way because I might want to put my dimensions fairly close to where those labels were. So in terms of dimension and text height, um, we're drawing them at 3 millimeters high, unscaled. So if you were to grab your 1-to-1 scale, and you'd see 3 millimeters here, so it's fairly small text, and that's what we're going to use for both our view titles and for our dimensions. And then the title block, which you should put in the lower right corner, would be its own animal. So let me put down one dimension here so you can kind of see how this thing's going to go. Now, um, when we were talking about the different kinds of dimensions, these were all mechanical dimensions. And because we're an architectural course, if you folks want to start doing the architectural dimensions right now, you're more than welcome to do so. So if you wanted to do your architectural dimensions on mechanical drafting, uh, most of the rules apply. It's just that the graphics would be a little different and the text location would be a little bit different. So with architectural dimensions, you run the dimension line a little bit past the extension lines, and then you use a heavy tick on a 45-degree angle, like so. And then you will put your text above it. So that's one way that architectural dimensions are done. And I do know firms that use the arrows and the dots as well. In the case of the dots, you'd still run the dimension line past, and you'd still put the dimension above. If you wish to use arrows, then the only thing that you need to do is to make sure that the dimension line does not extend. So in that case, you can just use a couple of arrows just like you're seeing there, and then fill them in. So either one of those, these ones would be acceptable. So these are more of a architectural style of dimensioning. With mechanical, the main difference is that you do not see the 45 ticks, and the text is generally in line with the dimension. So of course it is easier because you don't have to erase the center part of the dimension line to put the text inside. So for architects, because they're often harried and they've got lots to get done and they don't want to be faced with the hassle of erasing the middle of their dimension line to put the text in there, they've always put it above. And so you folks can choose any one of these conventions to do your dimensions. So for this example, I'm going to use the architectural dot style dimension. I'm going to have my text above, but I'm going to use a nice little round dot. Now, if some of you folks have one of these circle templates, I'm just going to check and see if I've got one in my bag here. It doesn't look like I actually have one. That's okay. You can just draw it by hand too. That's totally acceptable. Oh yeah, the village idiot is back. Okay, so let's do one of these dimensions and then carry on. So I'll use my heavier, or my harder lead. And I'm going to do the dimension for the bottom of this thing here. And then I'm going to turn my egg-laying chicken into a meat chicken. All right. So here comes the dimension line coming across. And so it's going to be a bit heavier than your construction lines. I should have made my construction lines a bit fainter if I was submitting this, but just for YouTube, I've made those a little bit heavier. So, and then what I'll do, just so that I can make some graphical differentiation between my construction lines and my dimension lines. Go home. Ugh. I threw a roll of tape at it, but it thinks it's food. So, anyway. Yes, Gretchen and Elizabeth. Yeah, no. They're actually pretty well loved around here. I just don't love them when I'm trying to teach because oh, look at that. I finally broke the lead. Oh, it wasn't broken where I thought it was. Oh, okay. All right. So Gretchen and Elizabeth are oh, I think she's figured out where her friends are. They're actually an old world breed. They're called a Plymouth Bard. So they're a black and white chicken, and they're quite large, and they lay very regularly for probably 5 to 7 years instead of 2, like the cheap and nasty American production chickens that you get. Okay, so there's the dot. What's that? Well, they actually, like I said, they're an old world breed. They call them the Plymouth Bard chicken because they were bred in the eastern United States back in the 17 and 1800s. So it's an old breed, but they are pretty large. And I guess just in terms of space, egg layers don't want big chickens. They want smaller chickens so they can pack more chickens into a space. So, all right. So here come. No, here I'll. Okay, okay, hold on. guys go on Discord, I'll switch my camera up here. There you go. Have yourself a.
Who was that, Wes? Was that correction?
That was Elizabeth. Oh, now,
Elizabeth.
now she's complaining that she can't find her friend either. But she's a little bit more clever than her other one. Not that either of them were too terribly clever, but you know what it is? It's not about how clever they can get. It's the depth of the stupidity. Um, yeah, if you guys, what's the movie? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their IQ goes into the negative numbers. Um, if you've seen the Disney movie Moana, where I think they call it the chicken hey hey, the one that goes around on the boat with the main characters, and like that thing is like, you can see there's nothing happening in between the eyeballs on that, and that's typically what I've seen. Whereas these ones, when we go into their pen, they actually look at you in the eye, and yeah, they do. They actually turn their heads up and they look at you in the eye, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't necessarily make them that much smarter, but it just prevents them from being as stupid as the production chickens, where you go and they don't even look at the eye. They're not. They don't look at anything. They just. I'm not. I'm not sure what's going on there. It's. They're already dead inside and ready for packaging. That's a operable theory. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I probably have potted plants that are smarter than my chickens, right? So. So that's kind of one aspect of the dimension. I just realized it's a little bit large. You can totally freehand in the numbers as you do them. For the first little bit, what you would do is you'd create a millimeter of space in between them, and then you could just quickly, like just roughly sketch in just an underline for where you're going to put the text if you want. Um, like so, and then provide that 3 millimeter space for the text so you can kind of see how big, you know, how big the text should be as you're drawing it. So here I've got these two lines. So now it gives me a bit of a guide for putting in that dimension. Now my sixes aren't very consistent, but you folks can kind of see the size of the dimensions. So now on the inside, um, we're just doing out to out. So we've got all those other dimensions, and we're just not going to worry about them um, for this assignment. So we're just going to put the dimension line across there. And then I will darken up my dimension lines a little bit here just to make sure that they're not confused with and maybe what I could do here is I could just lightly erase my construction lines once I've got them drawn up.
Sorry, are we supposed to be seeing your paper right now?
Oh, on YouTube, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what kind of makes it difficult because I'm live streaming to YouTube um, because you guys get the better quality. Just because Zoom's resolution, despite my request for 1080 high def, they're blowing me off. They're like, that, sorry, can't give it to you. COVID, can't give you anything. I'm like, but I can get it on YouTube. So like, fine, go do it on YouTube. It just means one more place for you folks to look, um, unfortunately. So yeah, this is all going to be on YouTube, and so I'll put in my text here. Again, it's got to be visible from the right-hand side of the sheet. So just out to out dimensions, that's it. But make sure that you've got everything drawn correctly. Uh-oh, I went 15 minutes into lunchtime. But that's it for today, folks. So you guys want to start drawing these things, go ahead and do it. I do have a class that I teach at 2:30, but prior to that, I'll be around to take your questions and kill the chickens.